So I wanted to talk today about maladaptive daydreaming and pacing. This is something that's really interesting to me because it's something that I forced myself to stop doing at a particular time. And I think, had I known more about maladaptive daydreaming, had I known this was a condition other people did, I probably wouldn't have felt the need to force myself to stop this in the way that I did. I had really a lot of shame around this and a lot of embarrassment, and I was really worried that someone would catch me doing that. And that was like the physical manifestation of maladaptive daydreaming for me. So I almost felt, if I wasn't doing that, then I was doing something more healthy, which was just maladaptive daydreaming in my head. Even though for me it wasn't more healthy, actually I felt worse, probably because I had denied myself something that my body physically naturally wanted to do in order to relieve stress or to regulate my feelings, or whatever my body was trying to achieve by doing this. I was denying myself the ability to do that because I was so embarrassed and so scared of getting caught. So I just wanted to talk about my story involving pacing and the physical aspects of maladaptive daydreaming, and I would really love to hear anyone else's point of view on this, because something I think that's really interesting to me is that I really associated this pacing with childhood and with being younger, and I felt the need to stop it because I felt it was a childish thing to do. The more I've researched into maladaptive daydreaming, the more I can see that so many people continued this into adulthood because, it is just a feature of maladaptive daydreaming. So they didn't feel the need to cut this off. If they weren't cutting off the maladaptive daydreaming, it was like, part and parcel. It was like all the same package for them. Whereas for me, I kind of saw it as two distinct things, even though I knew they were linked and I knew my body was kind of crying out to move in a sense. But, I was able to cut off one and not the other. And I think, for other people, it seems to me that a lot of people, they continue to maladaptive daydreaming in the way they've always maladaptive daydreaming, and that includes a physical component. That includes literally, taking time and doing some physical actions, which is usually pacing or, gesturing, just, particular movements that kind of get the daydreams to be more vivid, and they get you in like a kind of, I guess, a flow state almost, like for your maladaptive daydreaming, even though it's not healthy like a flow state because you're not present with yourself. You're able to take your mind away from your body actually by moving your body, which is really quite fascinating. So yeah, I'll just kind of tell you, my story with this. So when I was maybe 11 or 12, I think I started the pacing in my bedroom, and I would just run up and down. I would put music on, I would run up and down. I had what did I describe this? Like the bed frame. I had the end of the bed frame, and I would kind of lean on that and jump off it and keep doing that. And I kept doing that action, and that action was obviously triggering my daydreams. And it's funny for me to think back to that because it seems like such a random thing to do, but it's it made things so vivid for me. And it was just, I don't know, when I think back, I'm I would actually love to have seen exactly what it was I was doing, because it's, I wonder how that would have looked, and whether, what somebody would have thought of that. Anyway, so I did this in my bedroom in my family home for years, probably, up until I was 17 or so. I suppose around those years is when I would have started to feel the most shame around it. But I don't really remember trying to stop. I just remember feeling embarrassed. And maybe I did try to stop. It's kind of a bit of a blur now, but my thought in my head was that when I went to university, I would completely stop this. I wouldn't do this because I was going to be a grown-up, I was going to be an adult. And I went to university, and I have a fear of hidden cameras, so I was really petrified that there was a hidden camera in my room. I was petrified of getting caught, so I really did contain myself, and I didn't pace at all. Because it's not just willpower. It was like actually like a fear of getting caught, a fear of being recorded, and that fear overtook my body, I suppose, that I just wasn't able to do that. And I fell into like a really deep depression at that point. I had like quite a breakdown. I would never have known that these two things were linked, like the depression and the stopping myself from maladaptive daydreaming the way I was used to. I was since diagnosed with OCD, so that probably explains the link there, but I don't know if other people have tried to stop pacing when they still maladaptive daydream and what that does to them. I would really like to know, like, what is that connection for anyone, if anyone wants to put something in the comments and let me know. So I returned home from university, and I think I did go back to pacing, but again, the older I was getting, the more ashamed I was getting, and I just, because I had the fear of video cameras or hidden cameras everywhere I went, when I travelled, when I lived somewhere else, when I moved around, I just like couldn't do it. And instead what I would do is just kind of sit in my bed, and I would kind of, I guess, like I was rock back and forth or like gesture, and I was always like, I need to be doing something that could look like something else. Like I needed to try and fool myself that what I was doing could like literally just look like thinking or look like rocking back and forth. And the fact of the matter is, obviously, if people don't maladaptive daydream, they wouldn't really have a clue what you were doing. Like you would just be like moving your body. It would maybe look like you were just talking to yourself. And I think like talking to yourself normally is fairly normal. So, I don't actually think, when I look back now, I don't think anybody would have actually thought much of that. But yeah, I suppose, what I am sad about is that I really did restrain myself and force myself to stop doing this. And in fact, I wonder, I do wonder now if maybe I made the situation worse just by not, going full throttle with the maladaptive daydreaming when I had the opportunity to do that. I kind of remember not so long ago, maybe about 5 years ago, I was in my old house and I was so depressed, and I was maladaptive daydreaming all the time. And I was sitting on my bed, and I was just kind of gesturing or kind of rocking, and I was just like, like if I could just like get up and do what I used to do, and if I could just do that, like maybe I would actually get out of my system and maybe I would feel better. I kind of like I just, and I don't know that I was not able to do that. I am curious if I actually was able to do that, or if it was just in my mind that I would be caught doing that, or that somebody was watching me. I always had this feeling that I was being watched, and that's what made it difficult. But I do, I remember distinctly having this feeling like, I am, how can I describe this? Like, I'm not getting the best of both worlds, or, I'm getting the worst of both worlds, because I wasn't living presently in my real life, and I wasn't fully maladaptive daydreaming to the extent and to the vividness that I knew I could. So in a sense, I was like stuck here in like this middle ground where I was like containing my maladaptive daydreaming so that it didn't look stupid from the outside, even though nobody was there, and also just living with this feeling of depression and sadness, and just just not enjoying my own company and my own space and my own life when I was like alone in my house. So it was just I was just thinking about this, and how I do wonder if other people have made that distinction between the physical aspect of maladaptive daydreaming and just maladaptive daydreaming in your mind. And I suppose what I would say is, if you are desperate to stop, thinking about hidden cameras is quite It's quite a good one. Well, it was for me. And I was looking at, how other people have managed to stop. And I think it's just about, doing other productive activities. Like, if you're maybe cleaning or, doing something else, like while you're kind of daydreaming and you're not, and it's sort of like you've achieved something while you're daydreaming. But I don't know how useful that is. It's just like what I've read other people have done. Like I said, I just cut myself off because, I truly felt I needed to. But yeah, I think, I think it's a compulsion to move our body, or, to have some kind of physical reaction to the intensity of our daydreams and of what we're doing in our heads. I think, the vast majority talk about having this shared experience, and what's so fascinating is that, when I was young, not in a million years did I think anybody else would have been doing this. I thought it was just so me. This was kind of pre-internet, and not pre-internet, but like where you would look online to see who relates to you. Like you don't really think like that at that point. So, I do wonder if today, if people start maladaptive daydreaming when they're young, if you look online for people, you're going to find people who maladaptive daydreaming. I wonder, if that's, helpful, or if that, doesn't really do much at all, like knowing about it. I would think knowing about it can start to help you in one way, but also in another way, you're still trapped in your situation, really. But yeah, I just wanted to talk about this today, and just really curious, how people manage the physical aspect of maladaptive daydreaming. Do you like take time out after work? Do you have a particular time set aside where you will do this? Are you doing it like all night, all day, and it's just completely exhausting? When I think back to when I was doing this, it was actually just physically exhausting, and the same way that maladaptive daydreaming itself is mentally exhausting. It's just completely tires us out. So yeah, I'm really curious to hear other people's experience with this. So if you have something to add on this, please do leave a comment below and let us know. Please do like and subscribe if you can. And thank you so much for watching this video, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye.